Today on the Ten12 Podcast, it is episode 500. We are loaded with guests today, including multiple Ten12 Network podcast hosts like Adam Eaton from Sons of UCF, Scott Wildcat from Bosco's Boys, Gerald Goodridge from Longhorn Republic, and more. Plus, returning guests like Lys Marquez and Christine Butterfield, and Shehan Jeyarajah, Ari Temkin, and many more.
Jewelry isn't a gift you give just once. It's a way to remind your loved one of a beautiful moment every time they see it. Blue Nile can help you find the gift that says how you feel and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com to find the perfect jewelry gift for any occasion. BlueNile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry. Pepsi Wild Cherry is bursting with delicious cherry flavor and a sweet, crisp taste that gives you more to go wild for. Getting wild may look different these days, but whether it's opting for a solo Friday binge watch or a big night out, everyone can indulge in their wild side with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Also available in Zero Sugar. So grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
This podcast is brought to you by our friends at Charlie Hustle Clothing Company. Charlie Hustle is a vintage-inspired clothing company based out of Kansas City that specializes in collegiate and hometown apparel. They want you to be the best-dressed fan this season, especially if you are a Big 12 fan, so be sure to check out their wide selection of officially licensed collegiate apparel today. Show off your school spirit all season long. March Madness is just about here. College baseball, college softball going strong, college wrestling coming to a close, and football season will be here before you know it. So you need to go to charliehustle.com. You use the promo code 101215, TEN1215. That's TEN1215 for 15% off all non-sale items. They've got every current Big 12 school minus Cincinnati. They've got Colorado. Don't worry, they're working on Cincinnati. They're working hard. So go to charliehustle.com. Use that promo code 101215, 15% off all non-sale items. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh. Welcome to episode 500 of the 1012 Podcast, the podcast that covers all 14 teams in the Big 12 Conference, plus Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. We are the flagship show of the 1012 Podcast Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip Slavin, and thank you for joining us for, I think, the most loaded show we have ever done. And when you reach episode 500, and I really debated and went back and forth on whether or not to try and do something big. We're already behind on recording this, so the schedule, we'll see how this goes. We have a loaded show.
That's not what matters.
What matters is that we're all here together, and I mean loaded. Right now, I've got 3 guests I'm about to introduce, and we're going to have, I think, at least 8 to 9 more people popping in throughout this show, if not more than that. I can't even remember. I'm so I figured out that once I start recording, I'm like a black hole, and all the peripheral stuff, it's terrible. I'm like Will Ferrell in Old School when he goes and gives the debate speech and completely blacks out. That's what happens when I start recording. So I don't remember any of this when we're done. Wherever you are listening, whether you're listening to a podcast form, do us a favor, leave us 5 stars and a review. We would really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, we don't typically post the video from all the episodes, but today, this one felt like we needed to do so, especially with as many fantastic faces who would be appearing with us today. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe. We try and keep up as many interviews and things on the show here on the YouTube channel as possible. We're kicking things off right now. We're going to talk some Big 12 hoops. I am excited to kick things off with, first off, friend of the pod, Lys Marquez of TCU 360 and D210 Sports. Lys, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Always excited to be on here.
Always a pleasure to have you. We have also the former host of the Midwest Madness podcast. She left us a while ago, but she never truly left us for good. She is Christine Butterfield.
Thanks for having me on again, Phillip. Always good to come back and support you guys, and happy 500th episode.
500. Yeah. Thank you. And Sons of UCF contributor and future Midwest Madness podcast host once I actually take the time to get that all set up. He has been Hazel.
Thanks for having me, Phil, and thanks for having me on such a special occasion. 500, that's a big deal, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. And it's always a pleasure to have you guys here. We're going to start by talking about the bubble. Obviously, the tournament is just weeks away. Like, we have 2 weeks left in the regular season. We're going to have the Big 12 tournament, and then the dance is going to happen. So we've got to talk about the teams in the Big 12 who are going to actually get in. Now, most brackets at this point are projecting 9 teams from the Big 12. We're hoping for 10 or 11. Fingers crossed. We'll have to see whether that happens. Now, I'm gonna name a collection of teams that I believe, as of right now, are locks. I want any of you to tell me if you would disagree with this list with someone who shouldn't be, or if there's somebody. We'll talk about the other ones in a minute. If there's anyone who you think is not a lock as of today, let me know. Houston, Kansas, Iowa State, Baylor, Texas Tech, and BYU. Anyone disagree with any of those?
I don't think
Nope.
so.
Great. Love having consensus. Perfect. Okay, so the teams either projected in or at least on the bubble that we want to talk about today are Texas, Oklahoma, TCU, and Cincinnati. I'm sorry, Kansas State. I'm sorry, UCF. I think you're too far gone at this point, barring a run through Kansas City to win the tournament. So of those teams I named, Texas, Oklahoma, TCU, most projections have them in. I can't find one that doesn't. Cincinnati, that team kind of waffling at this point with the play down the stretch. Who is in and who is out of those teams for you? And I don't mean as of right now. I mean, do you think who will make it and who won't? Lys, let's start with you.
Well, I'm going to go with TCU only because right now I feel like they are clicking at the right time. They had a little bit of defensive trouble building that defensive identity early on in the season. And I feel like right now is when it's a great time that they're clicking on that side of the ball. And they have such great people on offense. Look at Trey Tennyson, always hitting threes. Chuck O'Bannon has stepped up really well. But also Assam Mustafa is one of the guys that has stepped up really big for us recently. So I think if they continue to have them perform the way that they have been and putting up a fight, especially tomorrow playing Baylor, who they've had in triple overtime. So I think they're just clicking at the right time. And if they can get the big win tomorrow, the sweep, I think that's pretty good momentum to head into the tournament.
Christine?
I think that if Oklahoma does well in the rest of their schedule, they could definitely make sure that they stay in. Unfortunately, they're playing at Iowa State, and that is not an easy place to play in Ames, so that's going to be a rough one. They're hosting Houston, so there's a possible chance that they can win that game, but versus Cincinnati at Texas, I like those odds for Oklahoma. And if they're able to come out with those wins, I think it'll be just enough for them. And then you have Cincinnati, who's really on the bubble right now. And it could just be that this schedule is a little bit too much for them. I think that their most recent loss was rough to TCU, and losing to Oklahoma State is just not really convincing for the committee. And so they could have some wins later on to get, Kansas State, West Virginia, but I can't see that really being enough to get them into the last 4 in category.
All right, Ben, your thought.
So I really am interested to see what Texas is going to do down in this stretch. When I look at this bracket, I mean, it's so deep. I think 9 wins almost guarantees you in. So TCU, I got to say, is a lock. Cincinnati, I look at their remaining games. With it being so tight, I kind of start to look at what the non-conference brings for some of these teams. When you talk about a Texas, a Kansas State, a Cincinnati, and only Texas brings in a decent win non-conference. Kansas State is that big win against Villanova. I mean, they have an opportunity against some of these ranked teams. I mean, in this conference, you're not really going to have a stretch of easy games. So, you can really play your way in from any of those teams. I think Texas has some things that they can do with having Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Oklahoma to finish. But they got some tough road games in the stretch. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a toss-up, but I think Texas has a leg up on those 3 teams between Kansas State and Cincy. And I think Oklahoma and TCU are well positioned because you get to that 9 mark, I think you're in.
Yeah, you get to 500 in the Big 12, I think you're fine. And I think TCU sitting 4th in the Big 12 right now at 8-6.
Yeah.
I have a hard time. Like I know they're not technically locked up yet, but I have a hard time seeing TCU, unless something just ridiculous happens, not make the tournament. You're at 8 wins with 4 games to go. Baylor, at BYU, at West Virginia, and UCF. Like TCU is going to hit the 9-win mark. I would say I feel almost comfortable calling them a lock, but they're not yet. I feel pretty good about Oklahoma. They're 7-7. You've got to win 2 down the stretch. You think at least 1. You don't want to go 1-3 down the stretch. That's not going to look great in the committee's eyes. You'd like to at least go 2-2. For Cincinnati, the thing is this. There are 3 instances of a Big 12 team getting into the tournament with a 7-11 record. Only 3 times has it happened. Cincinnati, the pool is really deep this year. I'm not sure that's going to be enough. Like going 2-2 down the stretch, I'm not sure that's going to work. We've got at Houston, Kansas State, at Oklahoma, and West Virginia. 2-2's, I don't know that 2-2 is going to do it, even as good as the Big 12 is. They might have to go 3-1. I think once you lost the last 2, losing at home to Oklahoma State, and then I can forgive the road loss to TCU. Losing at home to Oklahoma State, that was one you could not have. And so I kind of feel like that's the loss that sunk them. Like even with 2 weeks left to go in the Big 12 tournament, I think that's the loss that may have sunk their postseason hopes.
But the crazy thing is that if they were to go get those 3 wins, they have the perfect teams in that group to do it, right? Like Houston, at Houston, all right, we can call that, just say that's just what it's going to be for most teams. But Kansas State at home, you could get some mojo with that one. You're at Oklahoma. I mean, they're not world beaters by any means. And then you got West Virginia to close it out. So, like, they could. And as long as you get out of that, I mean, you got to try your best to get out of that Tuesday game. That's really what it's coming down to.
I really think that game at OU is going to be the defining moment for the Cincinnati team, because like you said, Ben, Houston's just going to be one of those games where no one's going to look at them sideways for losing that one. But I don't think a win against Kansas State or West Virginia would be strong enough in the committee's eyes to think that they would deserve a spot to move up in the bid scenario versus another team that might have like a few key wins down the stretch here.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear from the Cincinnati coach yesterday. Like, obviously, he's going to tell us, I believe in my team. He says that he has a good group of guys, but I don't know, the energy with him and the team, it wasn't really cutting it. Obviously, after a loss, you're not going to have all this energy, but just the way that they finish out games, it's just kind of been going down, and I don't know. I'm hoping they can hold on. It would be interesting to see them in the tournament, especially being new to the conference, but we'll see.
The other team I want to focus on just for a second is Texas. Now, looking at bracket matrix, they have Texas as a 9 seed in 100% of the different brackets that they pull in. So as of right now, everyone thinks Texas is going to go in if the tournament was played today. They are currently 6-8 in conference standings, 17 overall. And of the Big 12 teams that are projected in, they're the lowest in the net with a 41. Texas's closing stretch is at Texas Tech versus Oklahoma State, at Baylor, and versus OU. It feels like go 2-2 and you're probably set, and maybe try not to lose your first Big 12 tournament game. A road win at Texas Tech or Baylor seals this. A home loss to OSU or OU, like 1-3 down the stretch. If you're Texas, you can't feel comfortable right now. And this is a Texas team that's played very up and down. When Max Abness is on, the team's playing really well. Texas needs to at least go 2-2 down the stretch to not be sweating it on Selection Sunday, in my mind.
Yeah, I think you look at their most recent wins and losses, and their 3 most recent losses are to Iowa State, Houston, and Kansas. their most recent wins are to Kansas State and West Virginia, two of the weakest teams in this conference. So those wins aren't necessarily convincing. So I think you're right. They really have to get a road win either against Texas Tech or Baylor to show that they're really about their business and they can handle those tough tournament situations. And if they lose at home, that's pretty much that's going to put them in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I go back with the Texas thing because I'm living in Orlando. So, horns down. I don't really see it. Like, it's going to be tough for them. Like, they're going to have to really, really show themselves in this last little stretch because they really haven't been able to string any games together. So that's going to be the tale for them. Are they going to be able to put it together and kind of string some games together to show that they are worthy of making it? And then it's going to come down to that conversation of, does an 8-10 first round loss in the conference tournament team make the tournament? I guess it depends if those wins include maybe Baylor or Texas Tech down this stretch, but I don't know. This is a stretch where you might see an Oklahoma be able to kind of leapfrog them when you're talking about the standings.
It's going to be a very interesting closing 2 weeks. And of course, the Big 12 tournament is always a fun and a wild time. Lys, Christine, Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today for episode 500. I'm going to let you guys sign off. Everybody, just like quick Twitter handles. Christine.
CB on Sports.
Ben.
B Hayes 12.
Lys.
LYSQUEZ. That's my @ and I'll be at the Big 12 tournament, so watch out for my coverage.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to let these three all sign off, and we're going to introduce our next round of guests. I'm very excited for the next round. Like I said, we've got an absolutely loaded show for you today. I'm going to bring in our next collection of individuals. Oh, I missed one here. Here we go. We have from the Big 1012 Network, we have Adam of Sons of UCF representing UCF, and from the Scott and Holman podcast, that is our Houston show. One of the first shows we added early on because we needed a Houston show, and it's the only, as far as I'm concerned, it's the only Houston sports podcast there is. It's the best one by far. We have Sam and we have Bobby. All three of you, welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us, Phil.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Look, look, we're going full out. We're going all out. We're going all out for episode 500. Like we just had to. So I brought you guys on together on purpose because I want to talk about the newcomers, the 4 new schools in the Big 12 this season. You guys represent 2 of them in UCF and Houston, but a lot of varying projections and ideas of how the new schools would perform, specifically when it came to men's basketball. We all had high expectations for Houston. I feel like they're delivering them. We had low expectations for UCF. I feel like they've kind of exceeded them. They're not last in conference, so that's a good thing. And of course, we also want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on BYU and Cincinnati as well. Let's start with Houston. They're sitting atop the conference standings. Iowa State's 1 game back. Kansas is 2 games back. There's 4 games left to go. Sam, let's start with you, man. I mean, is this what you guys expected for Houston in year 1?
I think we expected around the top 4. I don't think when we looked at the basketball season, whether it was back in November right before or during the late spring and summer months, that we thought late February, first place in the Big 12 was fait accompli, or the most likely outcome. I think if you had told us it would have happened, I don't think we would have fallen out of our seats, because this projected to be a good team. This projected to be a team that brought a lot back from what was a very good team last year. But I don't think it would have been the most likely outcome. If I had probably gun to my head, most likely thing that would have happened here, I probably would have guessed around somewhere in that 3rd to 5th range, maybe within a couple of games of the title. So obviously, I'm very, very excited that obviously set plenty of time to go. I'm not at all wildly confident we're going to be the team standing at the top of the conference when all the regular season is done, because there's a lot of good teams standing in the way of that. But very happy that the team is where they are right now.
Yeah, for me, it was going to be, like Sam said, top 4 when it came to the conference. First place was maybe, you got to go after Kansas. You expect Kansas to be the people who run the conference and to be the team that is up on them and up on top of this conference. I don't think we necessarily expected to be number 1. I think we expected to contend for it, But like Sam said, gun to the head, I don't think I would have picked Houston to be number one, but definitely a top 3-4 team in this conference.
I think that's fair. I think it's a fair X. And I think that's accurate for what most people expected. I don't think anybody thought Houston was going to come in and not compete. If they were, they've never actually watched Houston men's basketball before. They just saw a former AAC team comes to Big 12. We're going to show you. Though we did enjoy the first time you lost with the welcome to the Big 12 tweets. Like it was going to happen. Adam, as our UCF representative, UCF has exceeded, met, or underperformed based off of UCF expectations.
I mean, you got to say exceeded. I think there's people who thought that UCF wouldn't win a game in his conference this season, right? And they were not world beaters in the AAC. One tournament appearance in 8 seasons for Johnny Dawkins. This is not a basketball school. So I think everyone expected 1-2 wins would be sort of the ceiling here. And then we start 3-3, and then everyone gets really excited. And then, as UCF fans do, we get out of pocket and we start talking about tournament. We start talking about other stuff, and then all of a sudden, little pesky 4-game losing streak, and we come back down to earth. But I think exceeded expectations. Now, certainly there are people who think that UCF should have been more competitive. I think there were some games UCF could have won that they lost. Baylor comes to mind. At Texas Tech comes to mind. At BYU, at UCF comes to mind. And so there are some games that were still on the table that UCF probably could have put in the win column if they were a little bit better, a little bit deeper team. But I think exceeded expectations. I think if you had asked a UCF fan, midway through this conference schedule or towards the back half, you had 5 conference wins, would you sign up for that? I think 10 out of 10 would have said absolutely yes. And I think 10 out of 10 would have said there's no bleeping way we have 5 conference wins. So I think it's exceeded expectations, although it's going to be probably a losing conference record. I think a lot of people think this may be the best team that UCF's put out from a basketball standpoint, or the best output UCF's had. It's funny, we're talking on our pod this week about this, Phillip, and I think Sam and Bobby, curious your perspective too. Every team this year that's played in the Big 12, it's the toughest schedule they've ever played. Right, it's the toughest schedule they've ever played in every sport, from basketball, volleyball, softball, baseball, whatever. Toughest schedule. And if you told UCF fans they're going to win 5 conference games in the Big 12 when the year started, they probably would have signed Johnny Dawkins to a lifetime contract extension. So I think exceeded expectations. But again, because we're UCF fans, we got out of pocket early and we expected a lot more. And so you're going to have that disgruntled nature. But I think if you don't have this exceeding expectations, then I can't help you.
I was going to add, the only thing that's not surprising about UCF is I figured, and that's why I figured they do a little bit better than the kind of low preseason projections, is that I figured it would be a tough arena to go to. I figured that UCF fans would pack that place. I think, Bobby, you said when we previewed the league that they're going to pack that place out for the big games, and that's going to be more of an advantage that maybe people are expecting it to be in the preseason. And I think, it's not taking credit away from the 5 guys in the court, at one time doing their job there. But I think we saw from the TV great atmospheres for Kansas, and just I think that's not a small part of why UCF's doing better than they're expected to.
Well, admittedly, Sam, that's a surprise because I mean, you guys knew this playing in the AAC. Like we would draw 2,000 for a Tuesday night game against.
You always
ECU,
drew well
right?
for us. So, that's the thing.
I was at that game last season in Orlando, and that place was packed. Now it was loud, and that was actually a closer game than a lot of people may remember was that game last year. But yeah, that atmosphere is not one to mess with. When UCF fans really want to bring it and make some noise and pack the stadium, they do. But to your point, Adam, when you're playing, no offense to East Carolina, right? But just like East Carolina. you guys are the same.
We might as well offend them at this point.
You guys were the same as us, where a lot of the schools in your area weren't the schools that you had this kind of, or weren't in your conference, and they wouldn't really play you. So the people you go to work with and things like that, they weren't East Carolina fans. So the people in Houston just don't get excited to play East Carolina. They didn't get excited to play, schools that aren't near us. It just wasn't very exciting.
Well, you said it best, Bobby. You said when UCF fans are engaged, right? And that's the thing is I think people were curious what that engagement level would look like, right? Temple, Tulane, ECU, SMU didn't really bring out the engagement, but this year they started this new tradition with the palm frond thing that people have really kind of latched onto. So it's been a good ride for UCF. And again, if you're a UCF fan and you've watched this basketball team, here's the one thing you can say: outside of Kansas State, the first game we played where they just blew our doors off, you've been in every game. You've had to watch all 40 minutes, and a dribble here, a dribble there, a shot here, a shot there, and it's a different result. And I don't think anybody had that going into the season where you have to watch. I think most people were like, all right, I'll watch the first half. We'll be down by 30 and I'll go, mow the lawn. And now you got to stay and watch the whole thing. And it's been a fun environment. It's been a fun game. I mean, certainly would you love more wins? Yes. But I think to your original question, Phillip, this has been a success for UCF basketball in year one for the Big 12.
I think this helps transition to Cincinnati because I feel like UCF and Cincinnati have a similar problem of you have Big 12 caliber players from a roster standpoint. What you don't have are the Big 12 caliber stars. And to win games consistently in this league, like you can have a lot of guys who would serve as Big 12 role players. I think UCF and Cincinnati are both examples of they've got good players on the roster, but there's not a guy there who you can trust versus Big 12 competition to be able to bring it night in and night out like the best teams in this conference do, which leads to the Cincinnati question of how do you guys feel, especially coming from Houston and UCF fans who are familiar with Cincinnati, having come over from the AAC with them? How do you feel like Cincinnati has transitioned to the Big 12?
I mean, I'll say it's a great home court atmosphere there. I went there in person for the regular season finale in 2019 when U of H and Cincy played for just basically the de facto regular season championship game there. And even games outside of that one, they'll get a big crowd in Fifth Third Arena. I feel like that's long-term a great ad for the Big 12. I think had to kind of look down the road. I think UC basketball, I really do. And I'm sure they'd love to hear this right now and probably don't feel as confidently as I am as an outsider saying it, but I don't think you can keep that program down forever. I just feel like there's too much tradition. There's too much institutional support. There's too much going on there for them to be not at least on the right side. I don't think they are right now, unfortunately for them, on the right side of the tournament bubble. I think they'll get there. I think next year's going to be a really big, really pressure-filled year for Wes Miller. Like, I think he's got to find that guy. And that guy might be on the roster. Giselle James is a really promising freshman, but like pinning your hopes, your program's hopes on a singular freshman, even if basketball is more of an individual sport, is kind of a scary proposition. I think that's where they are right now. I might have to go really aggressively in the portal and, find a couple of guys and hope that you found the right guys. And that year 4 is kind of the breakthrough year for Wes Miller, because it took Kelvin Sampson until year 4 to get the breakthrough here at Houston. So yeah, I think that's really the challenge for Cincinnati is can, in 1 year, this coach is going to have tournament or bust expectations on him, because I think that should be a program, and in 4 years you get a tournament caliber team on the floor in this league, which I think gives you the chance to have a tournament caliber resume. It's all said and done in mid-March. So I think that's kind of what's going on with Cincy basketball right now. I do have this unshakable confidence that at some point in the near-term future, whether that's next year or the 3 or 4 years down the road, that this will be among the better Big 12 basketball programs. It's all said and done, just because you just look over the history of Cincinnati basketball, they've always just been so consistently good.
Yeah, I mean, having those matchups that we had with Cincinnati, they were something fun, special. And we talked about this on our pod, where beating Cincinnati in Cincinnati really felt like the step that we took forward to move on to go to the next level with our program. And Cincinnati's transition feels like the transition to the Big 12 kind of came a little too early for them. I think another year in the AAC or two where they could maybe get some confidence winning some games.
But that team probably wins the AAC going right away.
Exactly. And so, you come into a much tougher conference, a much harder conference, and you don't look as good as maybe you would in the AAC. You play tough games against tough opponents in this conference, and you lose those games. And those games, to Sam's point, you're probably going to win a lot more games in the AAC, and you're probably contending for the top of that conference. So maybe it happened about a year too early, but I, like Sam, very confident that they are going to be a good basketball program with their history that they've had.
So let's talk BYU. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think really quick. I think Cincinnati and UCF have kind of the same problem, which is, they're kind of that middle of the pack Big 12 type school, right? And so you're going to have to hit the portal hard, and you're going to have to find some guys who want an opportunity to play in the Big 12, who, and again, with all due respect to UCF Cincinnati, don't go to Kansas and don't go to Houston, kind of the top tier programs, and you say, hey, I want to play in the Big 12, Cincinnati, UCF, those are schools that maybe you get to and you get a chance to play in. So I think they've got to figure out a way to hit that. I think you see a lot of fans giving Wes Miller flack. I think to Sam's point, is he the problem? Probably not, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on him now to figure it out. And you mentioned a guy like Jizzle James. I mean, his dad's Edgerrin James. Can they hold on to him in the NIL era right now? Like, Edgerrin went to the University of Miami. They'll pay anything for anybody in any sport these days, right? So can you hold on to the guys that you have at your school? I think UCF has that same issue as you look at some of the younger players UCF has. I think I'd be curious to see how Cincinnati reacts to that. But I think you're in that middle portion where you've got to get one or two game changers. You got to get a couple of guys from the portal and say, hey, come play with us, come play in the Big 12, come play in the best conference in America, and kind of hit lightning in the bottle. But I do think similar to Johnny Dawkins, probably there's a lot of eyes on Wes Miller and what he does next year. And I think it's going to be a pressure packed year, but look, I think we all probably remember watching, Kenyon Martin, Nick Van Exel. Cincinnati's got that pedigree. So I wouldn't count them out, but I think they're in that same spot UCF's in, where you've got to find a couple of lightning in a bottle moments and hope that you can, kind of propel your school and your team to the next level.
All right, so that leaves us with BYU. We're going to talk about not a former AAC school, the only kind of outlier coming in. And I think at this point, BYU has a history of having success in the West Coast Conference. Gonzaga, of course, being the school there we all know about. But I think they've held up in the Big 12 surprisingly well in their first season. Look, they've been ranked. They're at 500 in conference play. That does say a lot, because it's hard to be 500 in the Big 12. It's hard to win in the Big 12, as we've seen. And they've had their ups and downs, being a team that's very reliant on the three ball. But to be able to bring that style of play to the Big 12 and execute it well, I feel that BYU is by far the team that has exceeded expectations the most of everyone, even for Houston, and has shocked me the most. I don't know if this is sustainable, because it's BYU, and that is a program and an athletic department that seems to have more fluctuation. But for them to have come in year one and not, because it's kind of been across a lot of sports, for them to come in year one and look as good as they have has been very impressive.
Yeah, and I think they project to have a lot of that roster back next year. And obviously, things are fluid year to year. Like, you don't expect 100% of retention of, you're expected to come back players, even if you're the more money programs out there. It's just frankly a lot more coming and going there. It's been, whether you like it or not. But I think it's a really impressive year, like you said, because the West Coast Conference last year, it was very much a two-team league. I know it's always kind of a Gonzaga league, but it's Gonzaga and St. Mary's, two very on the at-large side of the bubble, and I think Santa Clara was all right, but BYU was like distant fourth or fifth best team in that league last year. To go from that to, as we sit here in late February, a team that is firmly and I think immovably on the right side of the bubble is incredible. I think Mark Pope needs to be on the short list of coach of the year, best coaching job of the current season, all that stuff. And I think it does help that, kind of like you talked about, they show you such a different look that what BYU does offensively, what you do when you're game playing for BYU. I think Sampson basically said in as many words after the game in Provo, it's such a different team to plan for than everybody else that's on your schedule. Not there aren't differences between all the 14 teams in this league, but what BYU shows you is so much different. And to show the size they have as well, that size and offensive skill combination, I think we were doing kind of the sports fan version of like kissing the solid ground after getting off a long voyage after we won the game in Provo a while ago. Like that was a very tough one. That was 19,000 very into it fans, and BYU is always going to have football, basketball, whatever. They're always going to have a very good crowd. I remember volleyball. We had our conference opener there, so I think that helps as well. Kind of like full circle. We talked about Adam earlier. I thought UCF was going to be able to bring it at least for like the big games. I think BYU, even more than that, I pretty much penciled in BYU for one of the toughest home atmospheres. And I think that along with all the other things we talked about, I think it's kind of given them a nice leg up to be this really surprising good team.
Yeah. And I think they do something like Sam said, like you guys pointed out, they live by the three, they die by the three. And if you're a new team coming into a conference like this that hasn't had, and you haven't had a ton of success, the way you can see success early is by doing something nobody else sees, right? If you are Houston, we just out defense you. We grind you down more than any other team in the country does, right? and BYU shoots the ball unlike anybody else. If you're going to come and give somebody a different look, the rest of the conference doesn't see anybody. Again, to Samson's point, is you don't see anybody like them, how they play. And so teams are going to kind of scramble to try and figure out how to play you, especially if you can catch somebody off guard on a short week, something like that. And then it works. You got a recipe for success there.
Yeah, they don't beat themselves either. I think that's the other thing is they're fundamentally sound. They don't beat themselves, right? They may not be the most talented team night in and night out, but they don't beat themselves. I mean, they beat UCF at UCF in a tough game, and we got blown out at BYU, and so I think that's the thing is they're to your point earlier, Sam. I think Mark Pope definitely deserves some recognition. They don't beat themselves. They're fundamentally sound. They got 4 guys who shoot over 35% from 3. Right? If you're gonna shoot the ball, Trevin Nell is pretty much money when he's behind the 3-point line, and that's a formidable team. And I think they've done a really nice job adjusting. It's again, BYU is always an interesting sort of conversation because you sort of wonder to year, to Sam's point earlier, what the roster is going to look like, incoming, outgoing. It's probably not a transfer portal hotbed for a lot of teams. Obviously, there's a lot of other responsibilities you have as you go to BYU and such. So it's curious to see year in, year out. But I think they've been formidable. I think they don't beat themselves. And if they get in the tournament, they're going to be a tough team. I think they're going to be a team that you're going to have to sort of kill them to get them out of the way of you, because I think they're going to play tough. They're going to play hard. They play unique. Again, you got 4 guys who can shoot outside. That's a recipe for March Madness upset right then and there. So I think they've done a really nice job in year 1 of the Big 12.
Yeah, like that 10 seed that just goes lights out and upsets somebody and goes on a run.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a tough out if they get in the tournament. They're going to be a team that they get hot, they start shooting. Khalifa's kind of a unique big, right, who can sort of play inside out. He can handle the ball a ton. I think a lot of people say he's one of the best passing big men in the country. I don't watch enough big men passing to tell you if that's accurate or not, but sounds good to me, so I'll go with it. But I think they're going to be a tough out in the tournament if they get in there.
So you're saying they're a sports team that has chosen to zig when everyone else zags and chosen the triple option? Is that
I was gonna say it is a lot like an option look. Like you're just you're gonna see nobody that does that on it, and you can't. And how can you say you can't simulate having like that level of shooting and also being one of the tallest teams in the country? The Cougs got kind of a decent facsimile of the look with Utah earlier in non-conference, who's also a very 3 dependent, very tall team, but I think nothing truly prepares you for BYU.
This has been fun. You guys have been awesome. For everybody, if you're listening, watching, whatever, Sam and Bobby, 2 of the 3 hosts of the Scott and Holman podcast. That is our Houston show. Adam, one of the hosts amongst the many guests and other hosts who pop in on that show, especially on the lives on Thursday on YouTube, which are incredible. Sons of UCF. You can find links to both of those shows at 1012network.com, TEN, the number 12, the word network.com. You should be able to figure that out, I hope. By the way, Scott and Holman podcast, it's PAWDACST. I get it. It's Houston Cougar. It's a paw. It's fantastic. You guys are awesome. I am thrilled to have you guys joining us today. I'm thrilled to have you guys in the network. It is a ton of fun. Always a good time. Anything else that we need to plug before you guys are out?
Bobby?
Nope. I got nothing.
We're talking Houston Cougar stuff weekly everywhere you put podcasts in your ears at SHPAWDcast on Twitter at podcast.bsky at social. Did I get it right, Bobby?
Oh, he nailed the B Sky. Let's go.
I think that's it for us. Though.
A single proud tear rolls down Dustin's cheek right now.
Yeah. So Dustin's crying. He doesn't know why.
Yeah, anywhere you do social media stuff or content stuff, just search Sons of UCF and you'll find our stuff out there. And Phil, congratulations to you and the crew. 500 episodes.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I know.
Absolutely.
We've all been doing pods for a long time. To get to 500 is a big deal, man. So congratulations to you and the team.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that very much. All right, we're gonna let you guys sign off. We're gonna bring in our next round of guests. Yes, next round. We've got so many. We've got so many guests. I told you we were just a loaded show tonight. We've got 2 here. We're gonna add in as soon as our 3rd arrives. We're gonna add him in as well. I'm going to add to stage. Come on now, StreamYard. Add to stage. There we go. All right, 2 of our 3. We'll see if our friend Gerald joins us as well. The first one, you all know this voice. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know this face. But you definitely know this voice. This is Scott from Bosco's Boys, our Kansas State podcast, and a beloved guest, both by myself and by people who like to leave comments of you should have him on more, which I assume is just Scott's friend, or or Chauncey has learned how to leave reviews on podcast platforms and is just pumping you up.
Yeah, no, he does not. He's really just not even learning like yes and no. He has a mind of its own. It's probably my fault for being too easy on him, but Phillip, it's an honor to be here. It's always fun to come on the flagship show of the network and 500 episodes. Congratulations. I think you launched the show around the same time Bosco's boys did, and the amount of content you put out, as well as kind of wrangling all the knuckleheads in the network, is a big underbringing. So congratulations to you, and thank you for allowing me to be part of it tonight.
Absolutely. Couldn't have done it without you. I couldn't have. Also joining us, he is one half, I would say the less nerdy half of the Bear Den podcast. He is Joe Goodman.
Debatable. Yeah. I like that you brought in just all the gorgeous people into this one segment right here.
I know we're missing Gerald, and I was like, I need a pretty people segment. I need one for people on YouTube. Like, oh, thank goodness, something appealing to the eye. Nothing against every other. I'm kidding. Now I feel like I'm shooting down everybody else. In case he joins us, Gerald Goodridge, one half of the Longhorn Republic podcast, will be joining us shortly. I hope
he might be doing an SEC podcast right now or something.
Probably that traitor. I don't know. It's fine. We still love them. They can be part of it. We'll get started anyways, because I know that one of you, Scott specifically, would give up a kidney to be in the new NCAA college football game, the new EA Sports College Football 24.
People thought that tweet was real, and then I felt so bad. I felt so bad when people were like, oh my, that's so. I was like, oh, I was kidding, guys. I am so sorry.
Cool.
Everything on the internet is
Not
true.
Cool.
I'm sure that yet.
I mean, I tell you what, I saw all the tweets. It's like, oh, these different, ESPN personalities and the different players. Oh, I'm in the game, all this type of stuff. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a little joke because we had talked about it on the Q&A episode, and I created an extra level. Instead of just being like, oh, I'm in the game, people are like, oh, that's weird. I had that little line of, oh, new to Dynasty mode. You hear the voices of your favorite team specific podcast. People are like, oh, that is so. I was like, oh no, what have I done?
Wait, hold on. That you were joking though? You didn't get that phone call?
No,
because Phillip and I did. I mean,
well, you know what? I mean, I've publicly said that I'm probably not going to buy a new console to play the game, so they probably wouldn't want me to be a partner. But man, I remember playing that game for so long. It's just like, man, when you have adult expenses and that a Hearn Fund donation for football season tickets comes around, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, am I going to spend $500 on a new system to play this game? So I don't know, but I like the topics. I enjoy hearing it. I'll enjoy seeing all the content coming from the game coming back.
Okay, I'm gonna admit something I don't think I'm supposed to admit as someone who hosts a podcast that covers college athletics.
Don't say.
I think I played the game one time.
What?
I didn't grow up I didn't play sports games growing up. I was playing like Donkey Kong, Super Mario, and RPGs and things like that. Like, it's just sports games was not my thing. But I also didn't grow up I don't have my parents taking me to Oklahoma State games when I was a wee lad and just falling in love. I don't have, my parents went to Northwestern State or Northeastern State. I don't know. It's in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. I didn't grow up sports. I had to learn that on my own and adopt it myself. So I'm very excited for this game because I'm like, oh, this will be my first experience, and my wife's going to think I'm nuts when I go buy a console just to play it. But this is going to be my first. This is going to be my first one.
Wow. I don't think I can't think of the first year I played it. I cannot think between 2014 when the last one came out or 2013, I guess. And then whenever I started playing video games, there's just not a year I can't think of that I didn't play NCAA football.
Well, Gerald, I think, is going to try and join us, but we're going to have to do the first topic without him because we are on a schedule. Okay, so here's the question for both of you. The talk is always, when it comes to the game, who are you going to set up a dynasty with, right? And the correct answer is your team, and then G5 team if you're choosing what's your G5 team. But I'm going to take this in a different direction. I'm going to start with you, Scott. Scott, what Big 12 team would you go and set up a dynasty for in the new game? But you cannot say your team, which is Kansas State.
Yeah, I just want to go on the record. My G5 team has always been Army because I like the scheduling. Hey, you can pick, outside of you keep Army or you keep Navy and Air Force, but you get 10 non-conference games to choose from. But if you're making me choose a Big 12 school, my initial reaction when I saw the itinerary, I was going to say Oklahoma State. But then I remembered, that I've never seen. I'm like 0-5 seeing K-State try to play in T-Boone Pickens Stadium, and I don't want to play more games there. And then I remembered the 75-year-old woman who made my life a living hell for the game this past year. So I was like, no, I don't want to help Oklahoma State football and Deborah, the 75-year-old Oklahoma State fan, happy when I win a national title with them. So I went with UCF because my criteria was fun stuff you could do while doing a dynasty. So UCF, all sorts of fun uniform combinations. So you get to go crazy with the uniform combinations. And something that I liked to do back in the day, and I did this with like FIFA, and anytime I do a sports game, eventually gets boring winning all these national championships. So you do little small things. I would try to create a team only recruiting Florida players. And I think that would be fun, out at UCF, going head to head with, the other Florida schools who are not as good as UCF. Shout out to UCF. So you're getting to play with fun uniforms, have fun little side quests you can do. So I would go with UCF for my team.
Gerald has now joined us. We're hoping that the child that was screaming that delayed him is back asleep, sound asleep. My children hopefully stay asleep. Fingers crossed. Gerald, the question to you, the same as it was Scott. You must pick a Big 12 team. I know you're going to be worried about SEC schools as Texas leaves us next year. You have to pick a Big 12 team not named Texas that you would take and go dynasty mode with to win a natty on the new EA college football game.
Oh, man, that's tough. My initial reaction is Houston. I think it is like when you think strategically, right? Like they've got pretty fertile recruiting ground. You can get, obviously Texas is a pipeline. Louisiana is going to be a pretty quick pipeline state when you're thinking of recruiting, right? Houston, I can, listen to all my Houston hip hop playlists while I play and really get in the vibe and the mode, right? Like Paul Wall and all of that, taking it back to the early 2000s. To really get the vibes right. But, like Houston jumps out at me. I don't know why. I couldn't really go with any of the other in-state schools, but I wanted to keep it in Texas because I feel like from a strategic standpoint, right, having Texas as like your built-in, like you can recruit is always a solid play, right? IRL, like my real Texas State, I'm going to take Texas State to the natty is like my real answer, like when the game comes out. Bobcats, we're taking Texas back. Let's do it. But, overall, if for the prompt itself,
that's my G5. Yep.
So we know Joe's G5 as well is Texas State. Joe, you can't take Baylor. So which Big 12
I'll give you the reasoning. So when I play these games, I care about what am I looking at, right? My home team. That's where I'm going to be playing 6 or 7 games a year. I want a stadium that looks badass. Yeah. And out of all the G5 teams that are out there, like Texas State actually has a pretty cool looking stadium, especially when you get the team good enough and the place is packed. But that's why my answer to this question of the Big 12 school that I would pick, who's going to have some pretty badass looking uniforms and who's got a gorgeous, gorgeous scenic stadium, and that's Colorado. So I'm taking Colorado all day.
I like it. I would choose Iowa State just because the idea of getting Iowa State to 10 wins alone would be an incredible achievement. So winning a national championship would just be otherworldly.
I was about to leave the show. Put it on like freshman mode and you couldn't pull it off. Like they just it's a
game
meme,
glitches
it's a
at
meme
9
in the game.
Deletes it off your hard drive when you get that 10th win.
Well, you get to 9-0, there's a pandemic. Like,
yeah, I was going to say pandemic mode where you can actually, go to a Big 12 championship game, play a team in a big time bowl game that's only played 3 games the entire season, didn't actually even win their own division. I mean, pandemic mode, man.
White Ride's going to regret joining the network.
No, they're not. They have 1 million followers, and they're going to bully me off the platform. So they're not going to regret anything.
All right. I thought of this one our second question for this segment. While in the car, there is a video that's playing. I think like most people have seen this trending video, and there's a guy in Austin who asks this couple, who would be he asked the guy first, like, who would be your free pass, right? Your hall pass. And he's like, nobody. I love this girl. I'm going to marry her. This is the perfect woman for me. Da, 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 da. And he asked the girl, and the girl is very much like, oh yeah. And she names two people, Lindy Waters III and Barry Sanders Jr. Lindy Waters III, currently a member of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Barry Sanders Jr., I have no idea. But two very obscure names from Oklahoma State. One, former Oklahoma State basketball player. One, a former Oklahoma State football player whose father we all know. The guy's just like, oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. You felt for the poor guy because, I mean, I know the whole thing is rigged and it's fake and it's just for fun. I don't care. To find someone who obviously knows those two individuals and name the most two obscure names possible. So I'm asking each of you, what are the most two random sports alumni names from your school someone could pull out for their hall pass? Joe.
Oh, it has to be sports. Okay. I went into a different direction mentally.
Okay. No, that's fine. Bring it.
Yeah. Just pure Baylor alumni.
This is a sports podcast, by the way, Joe.
Okay. Yeah, this is true. But I would say Ann Richards because I think nobody in the history of anything has ever said Ann Richards is my honey. If Ann comes calling, I gotta answer. I gotta answer the call. And the other one that I had is everybody's favorite ventriloquist, Jeff Dunham. Because if you were gonna bring something into the bedroom, why not puppets? It would be very Matt Rule signing day of us.
That's great. That's great.
Scott.
First off, to have a hall pass, you have to have a significant other. So I'm just throwing it out there. Anyone on YouTube or listening to this, my DMs are open. If anyone wants to cast a very niche online dating show, like a YouTube version of Love is Blind with people from the Big 12 podcast or Twitter realm, I'm open. I could also be a bachelor for some sort of YouTube shorts for just Big 12 Twitter personalities. But for K-State, so the first one, Charles Melton, who is like a C-list actor model who did play at K-State and retired from football to get into modeling after he had a concussion on kickoff coverage versus KU in a game that K-State won like 59-7 back in 2011. So Charles Melton, I think he has some sort of role on Riverdale. I haven't watched it, but I pulled up his IMDb, but he was also in May, December, a very weird movie, I think on Amazon, but he's like a C-list model actor. And then for a female, K-State, they've had a lot of Miss Kansas go on to finish top 10 in Miss America and all this type of stuff. But I went a different direction. Erin Brockovich, who is a real person, she's a graduate of Kansas State University. So, you know, that movie based on a true story, she is a Wildcat graduate. So Erin Brockovich, the real thing, in her 60s, I'm sure she's still looking good. So she is the obscure K-State hall pass, on the other side. So there you go.
Was not aware Charles Melton was the Kansas State grad, but there we go. Very well. Okay.
I think he went to Manhattan High, and I have some buddies who went to school with him, and apparently he was the life of the party for a long time. And then he's like, well, I got my degree. I'm going to go be professionally good looking. So shout out to him.
What a terrible thing to have to do. Gerald, of course, I want to emphasize, this is just naming them. They don't have to be your hall pass, Gerald. I don't want to get you in trouble with your lovely wife. Gerald, you're muted.
This is like
maybe you should stay muted for this question. I don't want him to get in trouble.
We lost Gerald. Sorry, everyone.
Now, so I neither of these would actually be my personal hall pass for reasons that'll be evident in just a moment. I went sports specific because I pigeonholed myself. I thought that's where we were going. The first one I came up with is a former backup quarterback and most eligible Dallas contestant candidate on, I think it was A&E or something, but Matt Nordgren, also known as Vince Young's backup for a couple of seasons. I think he had one of my favorite plays in the history. I think it was against Baylor, actually, where they were up several scores. He was running down the sideline. He fumbled the
Never
ball.
in the Vince Young era did
It
that.
rolled up back to him somehow, didn't even break stride, recovered his own fumble, and scored a touchdown. So Matt Nordgren is one, and then Doge Balbe is the other one I thought of. If you don't remember from the early 2000s, Doge Balbe was a defensive specialist on some of those Rick Barnes teams. Just absolutely, just random name. First random name I thought of was Doge Balbe. I think he still plays professionally in Turkey, so he might have a little bit of cash, but it's something fun.
This went better than I could have imagined. So bravo to all of you for being good sports and playing along. As we mentioned, we'll end on this. Of course, if you are a Kansas State fan, if you're a Big 12 fan and you aren't listening to the Bosco's Boys podcast, you should be. When he goes daily, I now understand how you can do 5 episodes a week. It's because you are not married. Because if I tried to do that with 3 kids, I wouldn't be divorced. My wife would just be a widow. So
I mean, there's probably a reason why I get most of my dating reps in, after football season through June and July. But there's also probably a reason why I'm going on your podcast saying, hey, my DMs are open. But yeah, we will go back to going daily starting in August through the balance of 2024. And I let it slip on the episode that I published on Monday. I kind of joked around or teased or flirted with the idea of retiring from podcasting this time last year. I'm 100% going to be going a full another year. The Quest for Bosco's Boys episode 1000 is truly on. Tomorrow morning is our 780th episode. Wow. I might have to keep going until we get to 1000. So Phillip, thank you as always. And it's really been the pleasure of my podcasting career finally linking up with you about a year and a half ago at this point. It's a blast. So thank you so much and congrats on 500.
You're sitting here like, I've got 700. And I'm like, him with 500. Yay.
But again, married with kids, single guy who is like the meme of a millennial dog dad. So,
however, you did just help with the whole concept of the 1012 dating show. So we're going to see if that podcast makes. Can you do a dating show? I'm sure we can figure it out.
I will do whatever I need to find love, find the 16 girls. It's Travis Kelce style, again, he ended up leveling up, but 16, one girl from every school, we'll date on Zoom. And then I'll either find love or have a lot of enemies and make a fool out of myself. And for the content, impossible love, I would do that.
Scott is one dating show and one of the greatest NFL careers of all time away from dating the next Taylor Swift. Gerald is the co-host of the Longhorn Republic podcast, our Texas podcast, that while the school may be leaving for the SEC, we will not be booting from the network. We would never do such a thing. No.
I'm just joking.
No, you would not do such a thing.
No, you wouldn't. And we wouldn't want to, right? We love y'all. This has been the timing finally worked, right? We just got laid off at the right time, I think is how it worked out well. We had just signed on with Vox when Phillip was thinking about launching this thing, and then we got laid off, and they happened to have a vacancy for Texas, and so the stars aligned, and it's been awesome, man. We love being a part of the network, and hopefully we can do several hundred more of these.
I hope so. And of course, Joe Goodman. Are you the nerdier half or the lesser? What are we like? If we had a pie chart and we had to give you a percentage,
Matt would win, and Matt would pridefully win on that one. Yeah. Like he wouldn't let me call myself the nerdier half. I would call myself, and I would actually call this segment of the pod. This is the Hall Pass segment right here, because as we all know, the 4 of us right here are the Hall Pass choice that anyone that listens to the 1012 network would choose. So, you can't go anywhere, Scott. The ladies will not have it.
I'm not sure because Shehan's coming up, and if anyone's seen how Shehan dresses, like that's
okay. Well, his game is ridiculous. None of us will ever touch him, but he's a demigod. He's not an actual person.
And as I'm pitching random ideas for online content, I tweeted it at Shehan. He needs to go, makeover show style to people doing football podcasts and help them redo their wardrobe, because that guy is stylish. So shout out to Shehan. I hope he's in, I hope he's like waiting, listening to this. I want to be his best friend so desperately.
There he is. He's back there. He's back.
I'm sure he's back there.
He's
the best.
No,
and also, I hope he likes me more than Seren Petro, even though I don't send him Kansas City barbecue come the holidays. So that's all I have.
All right. And of course, Joe is one half of the Bear Den podcast. If you're a Baylor fan and not listening to the show or just enjoy good sports and nerd talk, you should be doing so. Thank you guys. This has been an absolute joy. I'm going to let the three of you bounce from here, and I'm going to bring in our next two guests. One of them I have already introduced, and we have talked about. I'm sure he's feeling. I don't know how you're feeling, Shehan. Always a pleasure to have you here on the show with us, Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, and also joining us. He is a voice you hear if you listen to Big 12 Radio on SiriusXM, and you absolutely should listen to SiriusXM Big 12 Radio. He is Ari Temkin. Guys, welcome to the show today. Shehan, you are muted.
Oh my gosh, here we are, right? It's funny. Obviously, make a lot of comments about my dress. I am in my my very home clothes because we have a 5-week-old.
I was gonna say,
yeah,
he's got a newborn. No way, he's got his normal garb on. I love the Baylor. He's got the perfect college sweatshirt on right now. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's great. I wear this about 70% of the time these days. But when we go outside, I make sure that that people don't know that. So maybe I should have prepared better for this. I will also say it's funny. Ari and I texted back and forth. And we're like, we got to make something happen. We live real close to each other in Dallas. It took getting on a podcast with some guy from out of state for us to finally talk.
Well, it's funny because I guess I didn't realize that your wife was expecting, and so we were texting, and then all of a sudden I see on Twitter like a picture of a newborn, and I was like, well, I guess I'll text him. 6-8 months, I'll text him again. But so how is that going? Congratulations, by the way. That's your first child, right?
It is. It's been fantastic. So everything's been really great so far. Little baby girl, she's still tiny. My wife's family especially, they tend to have really small babies. So she's been really easy, thankfully. Definitely an adjustment, of course, going to having a responsibility every time of the day or night. But it's been really great. Thankfully, she's overall slept well, eaten well, been very healthy. Doesn't cry too much, which has been definitely something that we've appreciated. Wow. So it's been overall pretty good. Definitely a lot of work, but overall good. I will say, Phillip, too. I looked at this rundown, and so the last episode, the last segment was. Who is your hall pass from the school? And ours is like, we have to talk about the future of college football. Come on, what is this?
Look, I brought 3 jack wagons on to talk about goofy stuff, and I brought 2 serious journalists on to talk about serious journalism.
Still jack wagons. Come on. Well, one serious journalist, one jack wagon.
I mean, I'm always a jack. We could just switch to parenting advice for Shehan, since Ari and I both have
I do want to jump
now.
in. I do want to jump in and say, I do, just off the top of my head, I do have some people in mind. So one, I mean, I don't watch The Bachelor, so I don't really know anything about it, but I think that some guy who they called Pilot Pete went to Baylor, so I think that he's like a name that people know. I don't watch this show. That's just a thing. But if you want to get real about it, I mean, Dede Richards, former Baylor women's basketball player, now like a star, a model, played for the New York Liberty for a little while. I mean, I think that that's the move. Just to, if we're bringing stuff up.
My wife's still in the bath. No comment. No comment. It's not a bad pick. Yes. Okay. We're going to do the hard, heavy college football conversation. Look, I'm glad I have you two, because we're only doing this topic because I have 2 very intelligent people who I highly respect their opinions. Look, Big 12 football, the Big 12 conference right now feels the most stable it's felt in a very, very long time. While all of college athletics is in this constant state of flux. I mean, we're getting closer and closer to players becoming employees. We've got apparently a rampant college football coaches going to the NFL. This is this epidemic. Mind you, there's almost as many NFL coaches coming to the college football, but don't let that stop the narrative from building. Like, Big 12 fans have been kind of like scrapping and clawing ever since realignment got going back in 2010, when you started seeing schools leave the SEC and the Pac-12. And so finally things start to feel stable. Oklahoma and Texas leave, the sky is falling, the world is burning. We're all just let's just get drunk and so long and thanks for all the fish. Instead, you bring in 4 schools. Things start to stabilize. You get a new commissioner. You start feeling really good. And then the Pac-12 is the conference that enables not apart. Not Big 12, like you've been told. And you've got 4 more programs coming that you're very excited about. And the Big 12 feels like has an argument for number 3 in college athletics, at least in college football versus the ACC. And we can back and forth. I don't really care about that. The point is that college athletics is continuing to change constantly. So should Big 12 fans feel good? Should Big 12 fans be worried about what's coming next? Or should we all just sit back and have a drink and enjoy watching the fireworks both on the field and off from a seat of comfort for the first time in a long time?
Sean.
Yeah, I can take that first. You know, I think that what I like the most about the current state of the Big 12 is that it feels like it knows what it is and it has a purpose for existing the way that it does. Because the case that I've made, you look at the 16 programs, and obviously, look, this might ruffle some feathers. I've said it before. I don't know that any of the 16 programs is capable in the next 20 to 30 years of winning a national championship. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't aspire to do so, but like, I don't think that's the point. So many people are like, well, Texas and Oklahoma are leaving, and this ruins what the Big 12 is or whatever. I don't think that people's station changed that much. If you kind of look at it, I don't think that Oklahoma State can accomplish less because of what this is going forward, or Baylor or TCU. Obviously, you have these new additions who potentially can accomplish more with their elevation to the conference. And I think that the other piece of this is when you're talking about the non-Big 2, the non-Big 10, the non-SEC, I think you're looking for a couple of things from a conference. One, you're looking for stability. You're looking for a conference where everybody isn't clamoring to get out. I think that's a huge disadvantage for the ACC. They're very openly campaigning to join either the SEC or the Big 10. And part of it, I mean, again, part of it is because there isn't a program necessarily, or there aren't multiple programs in the Big 12 who are obvious fits in those conferences, but that is a strength. I think that's something that you can lean on. The other piece too is I think that you want to be in a position where you have something to sell. And that means both to fans, and that also means to prospective recruits. And I think that the Big 12 has both of those things. This is going to be a very competitive, very entertaining conference. I think that it is probably the most upwardly mobile of the major conferences. We got a chance to see that over the last couple of years, where you have a 2-7 Baylor team go 12-2. You have a team in TCU with a first-year head coach who manages to take a team to the national championship game. Obviously Oklahoma State has had their swings. I think that heading forward, almost every single team in the league has the potential to at least make a Big 12 championship game. That's exciting if you are a middle of the road type fan, because not many conferences you can do that. And I think that when you're talking about two prospective players, whether it's high school recruits or whether it's transfers, I think that the Big 12 kind of sits in a nice place. It's in a place right now where you have the ability to, I think, go out and recruit at a top 30 level. I think a lot of programs are going to have a chance to do. And I think that you also have the ability to retain players by making enough of an NIL case, by making enough of an opportunity case, by proving that you can develop a player for the next level, especially at certain position groups. And I think for transfers as well, I mean, the Big 12 has kind of established itself as the home of the high level transfer in a lot of ways. You look at what TCU is doing, for example. So my greatest point of optimism for the future of the Big 12 is that I think that it is fully going to be able to remain what it is for the next 6 or 7 years, at least, until we have more conversations. I think it's going to be an entertaining product for fans. I think it's going to be an entertaining and useful product for players. And so from my perspective, again, are any of these programs going to step up and become Alabama tomorrow? I don't necessarily think so, but I don't necessarily think that that's a change from how things were before.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I agree with Shehan. I think, what he's saying, and it's absolutely true, is over the next 10 years, this is about the pursuit of the SEC and the Big 10, really, for the ACC and the Big 12, right? And for the Big 12 to know what it is, it's a tier 2 conference right now. I do think in some sense, though, there's an identity crisis to a degree with the Big 12 because Yormark wants to make this conference more national, so we have, conference media days now moving to Vegas, which is fantastic. I'm happy about that. It gets it out of Dallas.
You get your travel comped. That's
right,
the difference.
Exactly. But I mean, will he move Big 12 basketball media football or Big 12 basketball tournaments to MSG? I don't think he'll ever move the football championship game out of Dallas. But so I think there was just this swimming championship. He moved out to the state of Washington. So I mean, I get it in a sense, but there's also, I think, in one sense, an identity crisis from that standpoint of, are you really becoming a national conference, and is that something your members really want? I guess you need it. As Yormark has been obviously fantastic for the conference overall. So, but look, Shehan's right. I mean, this conference is not going to have a behemoth in recruiting. We know that over the next 10 years, we can project this out, who the behemoths in recruiting are going to be and continue to be. They're going to continue to be those teams, the Big Ten and the SEC. So as long as there can be consistent teams, especially I think, TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, who have really done a good job over the years. I think UCF too, to a degree, of the guys that maybe don't initially go, that are local, that maybe are 4 or 5 stars that go to the bigger Georgia or Alabama, that maybe want to come home, that end up going back to a TCU or end up going to an Oklahoma State. I think that's, in the portal where they can really, get a ton of talent. But yeah, I think overall, when you look at this conference and the trajectory of it, it really is about positioning for the next 10 years because overall it's the SEC and the Big Ten. They're going to be eating the rest of college football.
There are always going to be people who both cover the sport and are fans of the sport who the thing that matters most to them is the teams that can win the national championship. And I am settled with the idea that the Big 12 is not a conference that they're going to care about, and that's fine. And if they want to poo-poo on it, that's cool. That's great. I still feel like I would rather be a fan of 70 to 80% of the Big 12 teams than a fan of 70 to 80% of the SEC or the Big 10 teams who in the Big 12, are you going to win a natty? No. But you can win the conference. You make the conference championship game. Doing that gives you a really good spot in the playoff, a 12 or 14 or 16 team playoff, as opposed to congrats on always being, hey, we finished 6th in the SEC or 7th in the Big 10. Like, great. That's awesome. I would rather have an opportunity for upward momentum than knowing kind of your place and being like, well, we're going to root for that conference. Like the Big 12, like the Big 12 cares about the Big 12 in the sense of like, we can make fun of each other, but you can't. We're like a family in that way, but we're not going to sit here and start chanting Big 12 just because the best team in the conference went out and won a big game. Most of us would still rather be like, who won the conference? Great. Go lose that game. Go, unless you're playing, Oklahoma or Texas moving forward. Like we're still, I think most fans are still okay with their, not cheering for their rivals. Wow, Arkansas has to be like, yeah, good job, LSU. Okay. Yes.
It's also a very fractured conference too. I mean, like, I bet you if you poll most Big 12 fans, do they know what city Utah, like Utah is in? You know what I mean? Like, do people know that it's all like, so like overall, it's just like a very new fractured. I mean, that's what I was talking about earlier with Yormark in terms of making a more national conference. That maybe is what he has to leverage. It's sort of unique from that regard. But I mean, Sean, let me ask you this, Sean, because what he's talking about here is, it's the talent drain to a degree, right? Not drain, but and I'm under no illusion that the future, the expansion of the playoff means that the blue chip ratio will matter less to winning championships. But I do think overall, maybe we can wait and see how the transfer portal and NIL and now the expansion of the playoff overall impacts competition. I mean, I don't think there's going to be parity overall, but maybe there's a little bit more parity because there's a little bit greater access now.
Well, I think that what I'd say about that is that I think that I'd compare it to maybe some of the mid to top level AAC teams or the Mountain West or the Sun Belt, right? Where I don't think that those programs, generally speaking, have the ability to ever really win recruiting battles over the Big Two. Two, I think that they're in a position where if they have a good player, I think that they're going to be poached almost every single time. If they have a good coach, they're going to be poached almost any single time. We just went through a cycle this offseason where Chris Kleiman and Lance Leipold had opportunities, and they are not the most advantaged programs in the Big 12. And they decided to stay because I think that they felt like, well, there's still very much something here for us. And the other piece that I'll mention,
but they do lose assistants.
I agree.
But they have lost high level assistants to the big programs too.
No doubt. And that's going to be a risk. But, for example, right, like Baylor went through this offseason where they lose offensive line coach Chris Kapilovich, and then they lose Christian Robinson at linebackers coach. Well, like the reality is, too, if Alabama wants Baylor's linebackers coach, they were going to get it. Right. Like that I don't think is a new dynamic. And, even for example, too, like Baylor lost a defensive line coach to the NFL. I think the NFL train goes both ways. But like, I think that's just a dynamic that every program, even, Alabama is going through it right now. They lost their offensive coordinator to the Seattle Seahawks. Right. So I do think that there is, in the short term, some proven desire from even good coaches to want to stick around, at least head coaches at this point. I think the other piece too is that, I love the 12-team playoff. I really am a little annoyed that we're already getting into talking 14 and 16. But the thing I love about the 12-team playoff specifically is that, one, it guarantees access for major conference champions. And I think that is a huge deal for the Big 12. I think the other piece of this too is that I think in a lot of years, the Big 12 can have a chance to get 2 in. Like I do. I think they're going to be a second bid league in a lot of years. Not every year, but I think in a lot of years. And what I like about it is this too, right? We obviously have the NCAA tournament, and college football is not college basketball. But I do think that what that buys you is the ability to have a successful season through reaching the postseason, right? For some programs, teams in the Big 12 are going through it right now, right? Some programs, if you make the NCAA tournament as a 9 seed, that is a successful season. For other teams, it's making the Elite 8. For other teams, it's making the Final 4. For other teams, it's winning a national championship. And I think it gives programs in a league like the Big 12 more opportunities for success. And the other piece too is that for all the talk that we've had about the college football playoff, everybody's always like, oh my gosh, Oklahoma made the field, and then they went to get blown out by some team. It's like, well, yeah, but like you're not necessarily going to be playing the 1 seed in the first round every single year either. So, if you're the 6th seed, you're going to be playing the 11th seed. Maybe you have an opportunity to win a game, and maybe you lose in the second round to the 3 seed, but that is a successful season to go and win a college football playoff game. So again, we'll have to see how it works in practice, and maybe the SEC and Big Ten will just decide, well, actually, we want all 14 seeds, and that's a conversation that we're obviously going to be keeping an eye on heading forward. But I do think that it gives a lot more ability and opportunity for Big 12 teams that aren't just national championship contenders and programs that aren't just national championship contenders to have really successful seasons. And I also think because of this nationalized tournament, again, I work at CBS Sports. Obviously, I think that if a team from the Big 12 is in the college football playoff race or winning college football playoff games, you kind of have no choice but to talk about them.
Yeah. No, and like, think about this, and Phil, to your point about like, will it be a league that's covered? It will be because of the access that it gets. And it's still, along with the ACC in that second level. And to Shehan's point earlier, like there's so much instability in the ACC. Now, I think ultimately that the Big 12 will have that too, because it really is just a Game of Thrones, like that. It's really just is that simple. But for right now, like there's just much more harmony in the Big 12 than there is clearly playing out with all the lawsuits and everything in the ACC. And I think that stuff does matter. And like, think about this. Guys, Kansas football can legitimately, going into the season, is legitimately playing for a spot in the college football playoff. Think about that. Like where they've been to where they could be going this season with what they have coming back. Like that's insane. So yeah, that's a hang a banner kind of season for a lot of programs, certainly Kansas football, a lot of programs in this conference, many of them.
Yeah, I love that mindset. I don't think it gets talked about enough. I know people want to. I get tired of the the loud narratives of, well, he's going to all these first round blowouts. Who cares? Like, God forbid we just appreciate someone getting to achieve something. Well, they're getting it handed to them. No, getting to achieve something, because that's what this is supposed to be about, is what you do on the field.
I will say, though, it is kind of annoying when you look and like Penn State is going to play Ohio State or Michigan again. And it's like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, we don't need to see Ole Miss lose to Alabama or Georgia. Like, that's the part of this that's kind of annoying. It's like, we don't need to see Penn State lose again to Ohio State. We already seen that every year, twice.
I have a hard time not believing that the rankings won't make sure that kind of stuff doesn't have to happen in the first round. Like with 12 teams, 14, it's unavoidable if they both win. But I can't, like, these are human beings to be like, wow, we could put Penn State 7th or 5th, and or we could just drop them a spot. And it'll be fine.
The other piece to mention too, of course, is that we got that in the 14 playoff. We got that in the 2, the BCS, right? We got rematches there too, right?
True.
And so I agree.
Why we're here. It's literally why we're here.
Well, tell me more about that, Phillip. Has it impacted your life personally? But
all right, this has been great. Thanks so much.
I think that ultimately, right, like, this is actually, I think, to go outside of the Big 12 a little bit and look over the next 10 to 15 years, one of the dynamics I'm going to be most interested by is long-term. Do these programs, do these games, do these brands keep the same value when they're no longer scarce? And what I mean by that is Penn State played Auburn a couple years ago, and that was a big game because Penn State doesn't play Auburn. Well, okay, now Auburn's going to play Texas, a lot, right? Now, Tennessee is going to play Oklahoma a lot. It's not a scarce game anymore. And so I'm curious, again, if Auburn,
no, you're totally right,
or Florida,
you're totally right.
If they're the 9th or 10th best program in the SEC over a 5-year period, like, are they Florida anymore? I think that, we're going to talk a lot about helmet games and brands and all this sort of stuff. But I mean, one of the things that I like the most about the new Big 12 is that the old Big 12, there was a very explicit, almost hierarchical, these are the 2 programs that matter, and here are the 10 that don't, or the 8 that don't, depending on when we're looking at. And I don't think that exists in the Big 12 anymore. Now, Utah fans will probably try to make that case at some point, but that's a conversation for another day. But then I think that in the SEC, it's like, if you end up with a clear hierarchy of these all-time programs, Oklahoma to me is a program that it's very hard to mess up. So I think that they'll be fine long-term, but entering the SEC next year, they might be the 7th or 8th best team in the league. They might be a 7-5 team. And this is Oklahoma. If that happens for 3 years, is that something that you shake, right? Texas, right? Similar sort of deal. I think it's easier to shake that when you are still like the king of the Big 12 from a financial perspective. Well, you're kind of just a guy in a room now. There are 6 other programs that can compete with what you bring to the table. So I'm curious, when we look in 10 years, like, I look at a program like Arkansas, I think if Arkansas were to join the ACC or the Big 12, they would have a really good case to be, I'm not saying the top dog, but one of the top dogs in the league. They're like the 13th best program in the SEC heading forward. And like, cool, you get to cash some checks. I am going to be very curious long-term when that's not enough.
What's the line? I believe it's Bud Elliott. You take the check, you take the losses.
Yep.
And so enjoy the money. It's just, it's a fun part of it. All right. You guys have been awesome and everything I hoped to dream that this segment would be. Shehan, do me a favor. I know you're still on paternity leave right now?
I am through March 11th.
Well, once you're back, where can everybody check out all the work?
Phillip? Are you kidding me? He joined you on paternity leave. Are you kidding me?
Tell your wife I said thank you. Thank you.
She was like, so you couldn't have asked her 15 minutes later, because usually it depends on the day, but it's often around 9 that we're able to put my daughter to bed. And she's like, so you're leaving me for this? So I'm like, sorry, that's when I asked to do it. So I have to go.
Don't ask for Shehan for a little while. Got it. All right, cool.
500 episodes, baby. Let's go.
Congratulations, guys. Congratulations.
Congratulations, you, Shehan. Yeah, seriously. Like, man, I got Scott coming in here. He's at 700 on the episode. Shehan's got a newborn. Like, what am I even doing here? 500 episodes. Whoop-de-doo. Ari, where can everybody check out Big 12 Radio that you are on Monday through Friday?
Yeah, Sirius XM, channel 375. And we have Shehan on all the time because he's always writing great stuff and talking about great things. And he's always active on Twitter. So can't wait to have you back, buddy.
Can't wait.
I'm gonna send you guys back to the waiting room where you can organize some sort of get together, since I know you need to be working on that. And that means that we have to end the show. There's only one way to end the 500th episode, and that is with the two people who I think have been with me the longest. I don't know the most episodes. So I got Chris, who was co-host, and now like pops in. And then I have you two, who have just been co-hosts for. At this point, it doesn't matter. Like I couldn't not end the show with you two. You two, of course, for people listening in audio land, because podcasting is obviously a visual medium. That would be the vibe queen of the 1012 network herself, JSJ, Jamie Steyer-Johnson, and Andy Mitz, the host of the Rock Chalk podcast and our resident KU fan. Guys, how's it going?
I bet that Andy's had quite the day. I know that much.
Yeah, seriously. It's been quite the weekend for Kansas fans, with the men absolutely obliterating Texas, which was a lot of fun, and then the Kansas women, they went ahead and pulled off the upset over Kansas State in Lawrence on Sunday. So yeah, it's been quite the day. Yeah, I mean, Phillip, you got to think, we started co-hosting this podcast with you for once a week back at the start of the pandemic, which means it's been 4 years. So I would probably have to guess that we have probably been on the most episodes of anyone that's come on the podcast with you, of course, other than yourself.
Right. Now, longtime co-hosts, longtime friends. Like, it just felt like the right way to end this. I don't have a topic for us to talk about. I thought we would just.
I was wondering, since there was a really specific rundown
right.
for everyone else
got...
and then it was just like our names, and it's like, are we popping on to say bye, or just gonna know that things are not gonna be kept to whatever the rundown would say anyway? So why?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, it's the old Stan Lee cameo appearance, in all of his movies. We just show up and then say, okay, bye.
Well, it was either gonna be that or the Matt Damon was in the back room, but we didn't have time to get him out here, so we went ahead and we'll try tomorrow night.
Man.
So
my wife would not have been happy though if I had gotten on this much later than normal, and it was just for you to say, sorry, we couldn't get to you. No.
I said it from the get-go. I was like, this episode will go as long as this episode goes. It is what it is. It's 500 episodes feels like the time to be like, yeah, we'll get back to trying to keep it to 45, but being okay with 64 next week.
Well, kudos to your wife as well for allowing you to be on for this long. So,
yeah. Well, you mean from the podcast standpoint? Yes, absolutely. You mean for the evening? She's in the bath, just having a lounge, reading a book. She is always reading a book and listening to a book on tape at the same time.
What?
Yes, not like simultaneous, but like concurrently.
Oh, right. So she's either doing one or the other and doesn't wait till one's done to start the next one.
No, it's just. So I'm pretty sure she's reading right now. So she's good.
That's the move.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I would read books, but I podcast too much.
I read books when I need to completely shut off my brain otherwise, because I can't read and also think about other things or do other things at the same time. It's not possible. So I read a lot.
I'm gonna do it more this summer after softball season's over, and we're gonna cut back on the pod for the summer. I always say that every summer. This summer, I'm like, I might do 4 episodes this summer, and that be it, and then come back for football season, because I love doing this. But after 500 episodes, this is only 5. Here's the thing: it's only 500 episodes of the 1012 podcast, TEN12 podcast. There was the old version, which was the Line 12 podcast, which we changed the name when Chris became the co-host, and I don't remember how many episodes that went. So this podcast, this iteration, the one that matters, the one that has stood the test of time, 500 freaking episodes. I should have done the math at how many times you guys have been on, but
that's all right.
Who has time for math, honestly?
I was an art major to avoid math in college as much as possible.
I didn't take a single math class through college.
I only have time for math because it's my day job. So
I can do it from like statistic. Like I have to do reporting for work, and so I like to have math like that. Not like numbers. I like looking at college football and basketball stats, and those are fine. I don't I'm not gonna do algebra.
I do box score math on air, and it's usually right. Once in a while, it's not, but
right-ish, right?
It's I'll calculate. Okay, so you made these 3, so that means you were this from 2, and every time, God bless them, our players are like, "Wow, good quick math," and like they don't say it sarcastic like I do naturally because I don't have a tone besides that. They mean it, and I'm like, man, you guys, you get me. I need that when I'm doing 13 minus 8 in my head and I get to 5 and we're all like patting me on the back. I'll take it.
You gotta take the wins when they come, right? You can't be choosy. Any win is a good win. Andy, all this basketball talk, and Kansas had a perfect weekend in softball and beat A&M. Like, we're not going to acknowledge?
Well, yes, we're also going to do that. You're right. It's just, unfortunately, the world we live in, most people, that's what they, pay attention to is the basketball, men's and women's. Thankfully now, men's and women's.
Although speaking of basketball, I'm hoping to keep the good vibes rolling here for us and see if we can't get another Wildcat takedown on Wednesday.
I'd go for that.
we gotta acknowledge Audie Crooks freshman record for Iowa State. She's like you talk about her like she's your daughter or like sister that you're just proud of.
They are all my children. Not children. They are like my much younger siblings. Like the freshmen are around 9 years younger than me. So it's just enough where like they're not my immediate younger siblings. That's the seniors.
They're all like your nieces, where you
there it is. That's
enjoy
everything that they do because you're related enough.
And they're such good people, and it's just so exciting. And like they're good teammates. It's just like the exact kind of people that you want to cheer for, and then I get to get other people on board with cheering for them too. It's like the coolest thing ever. But yeah, she set Iowa State's freshman record with hopefully at least 4 games to go and more with luck. And then she's pretty close to breaking freshman men's or women's. I believe that's like 534. So
Dang.
That would be right around there as well. I believe that one was set by Curtis Stinson. So that's certainly a person's record to break, which is awesome. And I mean, there's so many like good things happening, but Addie Brown put together the 3rd season in the past 25 years for Iowa State with 300 points, 200 rebounds, and 120 assists or more, and she's the first freshman to do it. She's like the 6th freshman in the past 15 years to do it. It's just there's good vibes. I'm very happy with them, and it's up and down, but they don't let that affect them, and so it's a lot easier to come back from like, okay, if you lose a game, you're just gonna bounce right back, and they're gonna be out there the next day.
This feels like more like what we usually sound like after we stop recording and just like chit chat for another 20 minutes until I'm like, okay, I have to edit now.
Right. Right. So this is the behind the scenes.
1012 Unplugged. Yeah.
Yeah. Got to do something special for episode number 500.
A little peek behind the curtain.
Oh.
That's my life. And then the amount of shoes that I'm about to have in my office.
JSJ Designs.
Yeah, I finally took some orders, so I'm about to have a whole bunch of shoes. I actually have 2 sitting on my desk right now. And
Nice.
then I have a ton in the mail, so that'll keep me busy. Basketball, shoes, that's it. That's it for me. That's fine, honestly. Then I read in the air.
Not a sponsor, but on Instagram. Is that the best place for people who want to check it out?
Instagram actually has like pictures and stuff, and then I post about it on my personal Twitter like I do literally anything that comes to mind. So
I'm gonna be honest, it may not be a paid sponsorship, but it's definitely a sponsorship.
I was gonna say, like, it's a sponsorship in the sense that if one of you guys wanted a pair of shoes, it would happen. Like,
I know, Jamie.
Well, then in that case, no. Oh man,
I'm trying to do some more schools. I just did a Miami pair, and then I have a pair that I'm about to start working on for a coach that is not at Iowa State, that is not even a Big 12 coach. I'm so excited.
All right, that's a tease. That's a good tease. So we will be back next week, and we will do our usual 3 questions for men and women, because we're going to have 1 week left in the regular season, and then we're going to have some Big 12 tournaments. We've just this is the last week for women.
Right.
Sorry.
Women will be done after this week, and we'll be prepping for the Big 12 tournament, which I will be at. Gonna be lots of fun. I'll see you there, Jamie. And then
not if I avoid you.
Yeah, I figured. Like you did when Iowa State came to Kansas. Oh wait. But no, and then the men are right after. So yeah, it's gonna be an awesome next couple of weeks with everything going on Big 12 basketball wise.
It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be a ton of fun. We'll be here for all of it. Of course, we are the 1012 Podcast. That is Andy Mitz, the Rock Chalk Podcast, here with me every Monday. JSJ, Jamie Steyer-Johnson, here with me every Monday. Basketball season's almost over. Summer will be here soon. Of course, we talk softball on Thursdays with Eric Lopez and Leah Nelson, so do not miss that if you are a Big 12 softball fan. Eric said that he was at, I forget which turn. Oh, he was in Clearwater for the tournament, and fans were talking to him, and they said Phillip needs to calm down.
Wait, I've got to ask.
My only takeaway was,
How are you guys going to keep that softball episode under 45 minutes with how many great performances there were for softball this year or this week in the Big 12?
Team of the week is going to be, I don't know how we're in Team of the Week and Player of the Week. I'm very excited for our guest that we have lined up. And if I say who it is, that they'll cancel. So the rule. I won't say who it is.
Of course.
Let's find out on Thursday. It is a player, which we're taking a week off, coach. We've got our first player of the season. I'm very excited about it. I will have her as probably my candidate for Player of the Week. I'm excited. Okay. This has been fun. This is episode 500. Thank you for everybody who is either watching on YouTube or listening on podcast format. Yeah, I told you guys we're doing the video from this one this week.
No, you didn't, but that's all right. I guess everyone gets to see my garage.
Yeah.
See all this.
All this blurred stuff.
1012network.com.
Can I get up closer so you can see how broken out my face is too?
Let's just see the vintage.
Wait a minute.
Cyclones. What is this sweatshirt you're wearing?
Ooh, it's got the tertiary blue.
That's good.
Except for it's not actual vintage. It's from when they re-released it.
But still, it's got the tertiary blue.
But yes, cool. It's my favorite. Wait, hold on. If people can see it, then I'm going to show you these shoes.
Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah, people can see it if they've stuck around this long on YouTube. I make no promise.
Look at that.
Ooh. Those are freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I just whipped those out this afternoon.
Nice.
It's been fun.
This really is 10-12 after dark.
Yes, it is.
Post show.
Well, it's after dark. It's late. Thank you to all of our guests for this loaded show. Thank you for everybody who stuck around this long. And we'll be back on Thursday to talk softball. We'll be back next Monday to talk lots of hoops. We have lots of hoops to talk about. Andy and JSJ will be here. I assume we'll talk about it in text later on. And to the next 500, folks.
Podcast Network.